In this chapter, we're going to build a quiz, or an HTML5 / JavaScript / jQuery quiz engine. It'll be a very simple quiz, multiple choice, 5 questions, but of course if you want you can add more. So let's take a look at the demo. Alright, so this is the UI. We basically just have a heading area with the title of the quiz, the publisher or the creator, and then we have the total at the bottom, 5 questions, and then we just have a question with some answers and then a submit box. Alright, so this question is, which tag should be used to represent the header of a document? And we know that the answer to that is header. Alright, so we'll submit that. Takes us to the next question, which is not a feature of HTML5. We know that cookies is not a feature of HTML5. What's the most appropriate element to wrap around a blog post? Let's say article. Which HTML5 tag is used for sidebar content? We know the answer is a side, but let's just pick something different. And then our last question is, using canvas, which is used to color in a rectangle? And we know that that is fill rect. So we submit, and then it takes us to our results. We got a 4 out of 5, and we get this little message that says good job, and we can change this depending on what the score is. And that's really it. They can choose to take it again, go back to the beginning and retake it. So it's not advanced whatsoever, but it does implement a few things that are relevant to this course. The markup, of course, is HTML5. We're also implementing session storage, which is basically the same thing as local storage, except session storage will clear when you close the browser, which is good. That's how we want it. We don't want the quiz to remember our score. We want it to be able to clear and start over. Alright, so that's basically it. Like we do with all projects, we're going to start with the user interface. Alright, so I'm going to create a new, actually first I'm going to rename this, just so we know that this is the done version. And we'll create a new folder called HTML5 quiz. And we're going to want a couple folders. I don't want that. So CSS. Very minimal styling in this with this app. And our JavaScript. And of course we need our index HTML file. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the HTML file. I'm going to use Notepad++. Actually, we might as well create the rest of the files while we're at it. For CSS, we just want to create a style.css file. Okay, and JavaScript, we're going to, this simple.js shouldn't even be there. That won't be in your exercise files. What you want to do is just create the quiz.js file. Alright, so we might as well open these. Alright, let's go to our index page, and I'm just going to paste in an HTML5 shell. Alright, so the title, let's just call this HTML5 quiz. We have the character set to UTF-8, and I also included this viewport meta tag, which will make the content equal to the device width that it's being viewed on. Alright, so it's a very simple layout, but it is a responsive layout, so it will look good on mobile devices as well. So we want to have this viewport. And then we just have our body tags. Inside of the head, I want to include the style sheet. And that's located in the CSS folder. Alright, actually we don't need this slash. It's all HTML5. Alright, so in the body, if we let's take a look at the front end here. Now we want everything that we're doing to be wrapped and to be centered with this space on each side. Alright, so what I want to do is create a container, and I'm going to put everything that we create inside of that container because we want everything in this space right here. We don't want anything spanning out. Okay, we don't want this blue heading to go out. Of course, if that's what you want to do, you could, but for this tutorial, we're just going to put everything inside of a container. So we'll say div classes container. Okay, and then inside the container, we're going to have this area right here with the title of the quiz, and then we have our Eduonix website over here, and this is going to be a header. Alright, so let's go and add in a header. Alright, now what we want to do is add the text. We're going to add this HTML5 quiz text, and if you can see, the text is going to have a float. All right, this is going to float to the left, this is going to float to the right, so we just need to put those inside of a div that we can float. All right, so I'm going to say div class is going to be equal to pull left. All right, and if you are familiar with Twitter Bootstrap, then you've probably used this class before. We're just going to make our own, and it's just going to float the text. Okay, so we want HTML5 quiz, and then I'm just going to copy this, change this to right, and change this to our website. Alright, so if we save that, it's not going to look like much. Hold on a second. Alright, so here's what we have so far. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is we want to do the middle area, which is in here. Alright, and I'm going to surround this in a main tag, an HTML5 main tag. Okay, so under the header, while still in the container, we want to put a main tag. Alright, and inside here we're going to have our form. Alright, now let me kind of explain how this is going to be laid out. When we go to our quiz, we answer, and then it takes us to another question, which kind of seems like it's taking us to a new page, but it's not. We're going to have all the forms, all the question forms in the same document. We're just going to use jQuery to hide the questions that aren't relevant, that we're not answering. Alright, so let's take a quick look at the finished HTML file. And that wasn't it. Alright, so this is the finished one, and you can see inside of our main we have this form which ends here. Alright, and the form has the question, it has the answers inside of an unordered list, and then a submit button. Alright, and then next we have another form, and you can see each form has its own ID. They all have the same class of question form, but they each have their own IDs, Q1, Q2, Q3. Alright, so that's how we're going to be able to tell them apart and be able to process them with JavaScript. Alright, so just to show you what we're doing here. Alright, so for the form, we're going to give it a class of question form, and then this one is going to have an ID of Q1, and we're also going to use an HTML5 data tag. Okay, so we're going to say data question, and that's going to be just the number of the question, which is 1. And we're going to use this within jQuery to process our results and display our results. Alright, these tags are specifically used for data, not for styling or anything like that. Alright, so that's the form tag. Inside of here, we're going to have an H3, which is going to hold the question. Alright, so for question 1, we'll say which tag should be used to represent the header of a document. Okay, so there's the question, and then underneath we're going to have a UL tag, and then our LIs, and inside of the LIs we're going to have an input, and it's going to be the type of radio. Okay, so this will give us radio buttons, and we're going to give each one a name. Okay, so we're going to call this Q1, just like the ID of the actual form, and then we want a value. So the value here is going to be A. Alright, and the next one will be B, C, D, and so on. And that's basically so we can compare the user's answer to the correct answer. Alright, now to get our question, let's actually reload this. I'm sorry. I want the finished one done. Alright, so in order to get it so that we can have these brackets here, or these greater than and less than signs, we need to use a special code, because if we just throw this in here like that, then it's going to be read as HTML. And we don't want it to be read as HTML, we just want it to be the text. Okay, so right here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ampersand and then LT semicolon, and that's the code for less than. Alright, then I'm going to put the word head, and then we want the greater than, and that's going to be ampersand GT semicolon. Alright, so this will be read out into the browser as less than, head, greater than. Okay, so let me just copy this. Oh. Okay, so we'll have 4 answers to choose from. And what we want to change here, we want all the names to stay the same because they're all associated with this question. We want to change the value. So we're going to say A, B, C, and D. Okay, now for the answers, let's change this to header, which is the correct answer. And we'll say heading, and let's say main. Alright, so let's actually take a look at this. Okay, so now you can see that our answers actually have the brackets or the tags. Doesn't look very pretty, but we'll get to that in the next section, which will be where we style this. Alright, so let's continue with our HTML. The next thing we want to do is go right under this form, And to make this easy, actually we got to put a submit button. We didn't do that yet. Okay, so under the unordered list, we're going to put a button with the ID of submit. Alright, so now I'm going to copy the form, paste that in. I'm just going to paste 5 of them. Now in reality, if you were making a production app, quiz application, then you'd also want to build some kind of back end where you could create questions instead of having to manually embed them in this HTML file. This isn't a very I guess reliable way to do it, but this is just for example. Okay, so you might want to use some kind of maybe a server-side language like PHP or something like that to be able to maybe have a form where you can actually enter your questions and answers. Alright, and the way that we're going to do things here, there's 1,000 different ways to do them. If you have experience, then you may not think that it's the best way, but that's fine. I'm just giving you one of the easiest ways that I can do these things. Alright, so we have Q1. Next we're going to have Q2. And we want to change the data question as well. And you can see it's all very repetitive, so it would be quite easy to build some kind of question manager, because you just wanted to basically print out just this and just change up the question numbers and answers. Alright, so Q2, let's change the actual question here. Okay, so we want this to be a 2, and what's question 2? Which of the following is not a new feature of HTML5? Okay, so all we're going to change here is the name. Change them all to Q2. The values are always going to stay A through D, but the actual answers need to change. Alright, so we're going to change this. We'll just say new media elements. Okay, we'll say form types. Sorry, form input types. And local storage and cookies, which we know is the wrong answer. Well, it's actually the right answer to this question. Alright, so that's question 2. Let's change these up. I'm just going to go through and do all of the Q's here, the names. Oops. Alright, so we got 1 and 2 are done. Now we need question 3. We also need to change this as well. So 3, 3, very tedious. Alright. Okay, so the question. I'm just going to actually copy and paste the question just to save a little bit of time. And I might as well just copy and paste the answers as well, as long as you understand what we're doing. Let's see, 3, 4, Alright, so there is our question forms. Now, could you do this without having to have a form for every question? Yes, you could. But this is probably one of the easiest ways to try to convey how this works. I want to kind of try to do as minimal amount of JavaScript and jQuery as possible. Alright, so let's save this, and this still isn't going to look very pretty, but you can see that we have all of our questions. Alright, so now what we want to do is include our JavaScript, which is going to be at the bottom. Now, we're going to use jQuery, so we need to specify that. And rather than including it locally, I'm just going to use the CDN. Paste that in, so this is just coming from the jQuery website instead of having to download it and then put it in our file structure. Okay, but we do want to include our custom quiz.js file. So we'll say script src, and that's in the JS folder. Okay. And let's just verify that it's connected. We'll just do a console.log. Say quiz.js connected. Okay, let's open up Chrome Tools with F12, go to the console, reload, and you can see that quicks.js is connected. Okay, I just spelled that wrong, but we don't need that anyway. Alright, so that's pretty much the HTML. One thing we do want to do is we need to create a div where we want our results to be outputted. Okay, so right under the last form, we're just going to create a div with the ID of results. And we're not going to put anything inside this div. It's actually going to be generated inside of our JavaScript. And then I'm just going to put a line break. Alright, one other thing we forgot is the footer. Okay, so under the main ending tag, we want footer. And then inside the footer, we're going to have some text. Let's see, let's use the pull left class. And all this is going to say is the number of questions. So total 5 questions. And if you had some kind of quiz engine where you could create this dynamically, you could have this update dynamically as well, which we could actually do through our JavaScript as well, which we might do later on. Alright, save, header, and then down there we get the footer. Alright, so that looks good. In the next section we'll be styling our user interface with CSS.